Hey everyone, welcome back to this video, and we'll be covering arrays, introducing you to arrays. And I'd say the most similar concept they're related to are variables, and I'll show you why in a second. So if we take a look here on our whiteboard, if we have a variable, so say for example, we have a variable called int x. What that does is it actually creates a block of memory called x. Okay, and then when we assign a number to it, so for example, number 2, we are literally putting that number into that block of memory to be stored and be used later on. For example, if we were doing math operations, something of that nature. Okay, for arrays, they're very similar, but rather having a variable called x, we might have a whole block called x. And the way we specify that is through square brackets. Okay, just like this. Okay, so when we have that square bracket, that indicates that an array is being declared. Okay, and when we form that array, rather than just one box, we might have a whole set of boxes. So if I do something like this, what this does is it declares a new array, 5 boxes. Okay, and if you look at the syntax, it looks a little bit similar to how we would have declared a scanner. Not exactly the same, but similar. But just to show you what happens now, so now we've declared 5 boxes. Okay, and this is called X. Okay, and from here we can populate it with other numbers, no problem. One other concept, so we have 5 here, but when we want to address a specific box, we call that an index. And the index always starts at 0. So you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then we can have some other numbers. I'll put them randomly. 6, 5, 7. Okay, so these are called indexes, which is the order or address of the box. And then each spot is called an element. Okay, so just wanted to establish some key terms before we get into coding these. All right. So as we go through some of these slides, you'll see some of what we already talked about already, right? Int, square bracket list, that initializes an array object. But when there's nothing in it, it's considered null. But in this third line here, when we have int list equals new int square brackets 5, that initializes 5 integers or 5 boxes that we can store. Okay, and then later on, just like how we drew on the other side, we have our array here. We have the array indexes indicated by the square brackets. And also, as we noted, there are 5 elements here. Even though the last number is 4, there are 5 of them because we start at the number 0. Okay, so now we're ready to get coding. All right, so for me, I already have a folder called arrays, but you could start one up. But I will create a new class and we'll call it arrays practice. Public static void. And remember, once again, if you get any modules that creates to close those. All right, so let's practice this out. First, we're going to declare and initialize an array of 5 elements. Okay, so we'll do int square bracket, and I'll stick to the name that they used in the PowerPoint. So int list equals to new int and number 5. Right, and that creates 5 elements. So right now, test this out, you'll see that this part here, if we so this part here, we'll see that if we put element 0 here and we run it, right now it's blank because we haven't loaded anything up. But we can actually load things in if we do list 0 equals 5. Okay, and we run it. And now we have the number 5 there. So we can manually populate these arrays just like that. But there's a more efficient way. So say we wanted to load up these numbers in order without having to do a bunch of lists. We can actually use a for loop to run this. And the way that will work is something like this. So we do for int I equals 0. I plus plus, but here's where the middle gets interesting. So remember, the middle part is the conditions that the for loop will run under. And arrays actually have a built-in function that tells you how many elements there are. So we're going to say as long as I is less than list dot length. Right, and this is going to say that as long as I is less than whatever the length of the array is, then it will keep running. And now we can populate by saying list I is equal to I plus 1. Okay, and for example, this is going to say list at, put it in comments here, the list at 0 is equal to 0 plus 1, which is equal to 1. So now to test if this is actually loaded, we're going to use another for loop to actually output. So we can copy and paste that for loop and we'll change the contents to be system.out println. And we're going to say list I. And now when you run it, you see that it prints from 1 all the way to 5. Okay, so try that out, test it out. In the future, we'll look at how to use methods to populate these. If you want to go ahead and try it out at first, you can. But hint is it has to do with the method parameters. Okay, till then, let me know if you guys have any questions.